Welcome, everyone, to Insights into the Weekly Haftorah. This week's Haftorah comes from the book of Judges. The Torah portion is Chukat. This portion is very, very full. This is the red heifer, the paraduma. It's called the paradox of the Torah, where this is the way that a person would purify themselves from the impurity of death. In this parsha, many things happen. Many things happen. Aaron passes away. Miriam passes away. Moshe hits the rock instead of talking to it. And because of that, God says you can't lead the people into Eretz Yisrael. There are the burning snakes that come and bite the people. So there's many, many things happening here. And one of them, kind of in between all of these, which we know there's a lot of commentary about, it tells a story of how Israel is getting towards wanting to come into Eretz Yisrael. This is after the spies, but anyways, Israel's still in the desert and wants to pass through a number of countries. And so Moshe sends messengers with a peaceful suggestion that we want to pass through your land. We will stay on the main highway. We'll pay for any water, anything that we use. We're not threatening you. We don't want war. We just need to go through your country to get to where we need to go. And Moshe is not given his request, put it that way. And so it's not even clear, but that is the theme of the Haftorah, which is interesting because there are other, I wouldn't call them more important, but more commentaries on, more things to ponder. So we would think that there would be something that would parallel these other incidences, and yet the incident that is chosen is coming from the book of Judges. And this is the story of Yiftach. And it's from Judges 11, verse 1 through 33. So in the middle of the book of Judges, there is a person called Yiftach. And Yiftach, so he's described immediately as a gibor, like very strong and mighty person of valor. And here it says that he is the son of a zona, of a prostitute. But it could have been maybe a concubine. But the other brothers that are born to the father of Yiftach see him as like an illegitimate child. And he is kind of banished from the family. And he goes off by himself. He leaves the family and he sets himself up. And what's interesting here, we had the case with David, that when David was running away from Shaul, it says everyone who was dissatisfied, who couldn't find their proper place, was kind of an outcast, joined David. That was his first core group. We learned about this. There were 400 men, and then there were 600 men. Interesting here, but it uses a different language. Here it says everyone who was like empty-handed, but it could mean the same thing. It was just people who just didn't fit in joined Yiftach. He was a very, very strong personality, but from his own family, he was an outcast, which is very similar to David. David was also an outcast from his family. But the story goes on that at a certain point, the children of Ammon, the nation of Ammon, wants to do war with Israel. And the tribes are fearful. And they come to Yiftach and say, you're a man of strength. You lead us into war. And Yiftach, it's a classic statement, says, all of a sudden, you recognize me? Like, I've been an outcast virtually my whole life, and now you're coming to me and saying you need me? And he says to them, I'll lead you into battle on one condition, that if I'm successful, I will become your leader. Not king, there weren't kings yet, but I will be your leader. And they agree. So here's the part that is the parallel to the Parsha, that Yiftach sends messengers to Ammon. So this is similar to Moshe sending emissaries, and here he's trying to make peace here because Ammon is threatening Israel, and Yiftach says, "Why have you come to make war in my land? All of a sudden, why do we need this?" And Ammon answers, "Well, you took our land when you came into Eretz Yisrael." Now, this is like, Yiftach says, this is like 300 years later. They say, you conquered our land. So Yiftach goes into a whole soliloquy explaining to them, well, it really wasn't your land to begin with. You originally took it from Moab, and you called it your own. And then we took it from you, and now you want it back hundreds of years later? Like, let's just settle this peacefully. Let's like just come down from your the branch that you put yourself on. But Ammon did not listen. And in the end, again, you have to read in the 11th chapter of Judges how Yiftach addresses them and basically says, you have no right to that land. We've had it for all of these years, so just give it up. Of course, they didn't. And so Yiftach went to war. And here it says that Vatehi al Yiftach Ruach Hashem. And it was that the Spirit of God was upon Yiftach. Now here we saw very similar to Shimshon, that Samson, that when he would exhibit his great strength, it was really only because the Ruach of Hashem had entered into him. We learned in the book of Judges that Shimshon ordinarily was just as strong or as weak as anyone else. But when the Ruach of Hashem would enter into him, we see, for those who are following our Tuesday classes, so we see in the book of Ezekiel that many times he uses a similar expression, that the Ruach of God was upon him. So here, the Ruach of God is with Yiftach, and he goes out to battle. But before he goes to battle, he makes a vow. Now, what's interesting is the Haftorah ends with Yiftach going out to battle and being victorious. And then the Haftorah ends. It doesn't continue what happened with this vow. Yiftach made a vow, a very innocent vow. And in a way, saying to God that if you will help me and I'm victorious, the first thing that comes out of my house to greet me, I will offer up to you. Now, it's obvious that what he had in mind was that when he came back, well, imagine that he didn't even literally mean his house, but his yard, his farm, his ranch, whatever it was, that an animal would come, run out to him. Obviously, he probably had sheep and goats and cows, and his intention was that he would bring an offering to God. Again, the Haftorah ends. Just he makes the vow, he goes to war, and he's victorious. But the continuation of the story in the book of Judges is that when he comes home, his daughter comes out to greet him in great joy that you've come back from the war, you were victorious. And here, it's hard for us to understand, for those who have been following this class, and we did the book of Judges, so we went into this in great depth, that it's obvious that Yiftach couldn't offer his daughter. And yet we see that, even though that's obvious, that, and the law is if someone makes a vow and in a way that they didn't mean it the way it turned out. In other words, it was like a mistaken vow. The assumptions were just wrong. The expectations were just wrong. That you can have a vow annulled by a court. Doesn't even have to be, three great rabbis. It could just be a regular court. But Yiftach was very stubborn, and the main Cohen at the time was Pinchas, and he was like, well, if Pinchas wants to come to me and annul my vow, let him come to me. And Pinchas said the same thing. I should go to him. He's the one who made the vow. He should come to me. So they point out, again, Yiftach was a great person. Pinchas was a great tzaddik, but no one's perfect. So they point out that in this particular case, a little bit of ego gets in the way, a little bit. And so what happens is that, and again, it's not easy for us to understand because they should have just annulled the vow. That according to tradition, the daughter of Yiftach, so she obviously loved her father very much and honored him very much and understood the difficult situation he was in. And so it's written, and it's not exactly clear, but it just says that she went with her girlfriends and they mourned her virginity. And it says that she kind of lived in isolation for the rest of her life and never married. Now, this is a tragic story and ended up very tragically. I'm just mentioning it because it's not part of the Haftorah. The Haftorah leaves it off, put this in on a high note. But it didn't end up so well for Yiftach and his daughter. I'll just mention that this, even though it's not in the Haftorah, that there might be a very, very subtle hint here, because one of the very mysterious, paradoxical incidences in this parsha is why such a harsh punishment that Moshe, for hitting the rock and not speaking to the rock, is not allowed to come into Eretz Israel. There's so much discussion about this. For those who have Orchard of Delights, I discuss it at great length. Many possibilities of what did Moshe do wrong here? What was the main, we'll call it, I won't call it a sin, but the main thing that Moshe did wrong. And one of them is that if you read the whole text, it appears that Moshe got angry at the people, and a bit of ego flared in him, and a little bit of anger flared in Moshe. And the hitting of the rock, in a certain way, was an expression of his feelings at that point. He was just exasperated with the people. And so a little bit of pride here, even with someone like Moshe, has repercussions. So it could be that, like I say, a very subtle, because anyone who reads the Haftorah probably knows the continuation of the story with Yiftach and his daughter. And here again, it's like a little bit of ego in the wrong place led to, for the daughter, who showed incredible love and honor and loyalty to her father, but a little bit of pride. So here we see with Moshe also. So this could be another subtle reason why this Haftorah was chosen.